We have started recording, right? So let's start from our discussion where we ended last time. So we talked about faces of a plane graph, right? We looked at this example and we discussed what is the boundary of a face. There is also notation for this, which will become, the reason for it will become clear soon. So the boundary of a face F is denoted as partial of F. And you can think of it as a subgraph of G, or you can also think of it as the edge set of that subgraph, especially if your graph does not have isolated vertices, but I won't write that down, right? In most cases, we will not have isolated vertices. Okay, and you will see soon why we are using this notation, which is the same notation as the edges incident at a vertex, you may remember, or also the notation we use for cuts of a graph. Okay.
Actually, I think in the
Yeah,
dual graph, F is a vertex, and for that
that's right.
vertex, edges
Yeah,
are basically
yeah,
precisely
but
partial.
since we haven't discussed that, I didn't want to mention that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, so I just want to state a few facts about faces of a plane graph that are easy to observe. So let's consider a cycle, right? So if you look at a planar embedding of a cycle, how many faces does it have?
Two.
Two faces, right? It's basically like a simple closed curve, and so you have the interior and the exterior, right? So cycles have precisely two faces. What I mean is, I mean plane cycles, right? Embeddings of cycles. Okay. What about a tree? If you draw a tree, how many faces does a tree have?
One.
Exactly one face, right? One can prove that by induction, but we will just write it as an observation. Okay. You remove one leaf, then it has one face. Now you attach that leaf again, and you observe that the face that was there is still kind of topologically connected. But anyways, we won't write down the proof. We will just state it as a fact. Planar embedding of a tree has just one face. Okay. All right. And finally, right. If you look at the face boundary of a connected plane graph, right? So you have any connected plane graph, then its face boundary will also be a connected graph, right? And that is not the case if you have a graph that is not connected, right? In this case, the face boundary of this face F, it's disconnected. It's the whole graph, and that's not a connected graph. Each face boundary.
So basically, for a connected plane graph,
Yeah,
for a connected plane graph, the boundary of each face is a connected subgraph is of G.
that's right.
Subgraph
Exactly.
G. Okay. Is it right?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay. So these are just some simple observations. We won't bother writing down proofs of them. If you're interested, you're welcome to do it yourself. Okay. But in fact, we can say something more about the boundary of a face in a connected plane graph. If you look at this example, you see the boundary of this outer face. For sure, it is connected, but you can actually think of it as a closed walk. You start at any point and you go around the face and you get a closed walk like this. right? You start here and you finish here. So you get a closed walk. Right? So that's another point I want to make. In fact, the boundary may be regarded as a closed walk. Okay? But it doesn't have to be a cycle. As you can see in this example, we get a closed walk,
Sir,
but yeah.
I think it should be the boundary of the unbounded face F, because
Yes.
in any connected plane graph there is some unbounded face,
Yeah.
and for that unbounded face the boundary will be a closed walk.
No, but why not for other faces? I am saying this is a statement for all faces. For every face, you can view it as a closed walk. You can view the boundary as a closed walk,
Yeah, it is true.
right? Because any face can be made the unbounded face by embedding on the sphere. This is quite clear, right? On the sphere, there is no concept of an unbounded face, right? You can think of an unbounded face only on the plane. On the
Yes,
sphere, every face is bounded, right? So
exactly.
if you go by stereographic projections, there is no real distinction between the unbounded face and the other faces.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Good.
But for some faces it may be that it is a closed path
What
instead
is
of
a
one.
closed? What is a closed path? You mean a cycle?
Yeah, simple cycle. Yeah.
Right, right. It could be a cycle, right? And that is the question I want to ask next. So when is the boundary of each face a cycle?
When G is too connected.
That's right. Exactly. So the question is, when is the boundary a cycle for all faces? And the answer to that is indeed the next theorem, 10.7. This was proved by Whitney, who also did the year decomposition stuff in 1932. He proved it for all non-separable plane graphs except for K1 and K2, which is almost the same as saying that the graph is too connected, right? In a non-separable plane graph, except K1 and K2, each face is bounded by a cycle. Sorry. Yeah. So that's the result. Okay. So I don't want to write down the whole proof. I just want to give you a sketch of the proof, and it's a standard kind of proof that you can fill out the details on your own. Okay, so let's just write a proof sketch. Right, so we take some non-separable plane graph and we want to prove that every face is bounded by a cycle. And I won't write down a tilde because we are anyways talking about plane graphs. So there is no point in putting a tilde everywhere. Okay, so this is the planar embedding of a non-separable planar graph. So how do we proceed? Any suggestions? If you want to prove a statement about non-separable graphs, what's your best friend? Who's your best friend?
Year decompositions.
Exactly. So let's proceed by year decompositions, right? Because what would be the base case? The base case is when the graph is just a cycle. And when the graph is just a cycle, we have already observed that it is exactly two faces whose boundary is the whole cycle itself. And so the statement is proved, right? So it's by induction on the number of edges of the graph. And we use year decompositions. And the base case is that if G is a cycle, then done.
I think, sir, it will be by induction on R. If G0, G1, G2, G is the earth decomposition, then
It
we can
doesn't
do it by
matter.
induction.
It doesn't matter. It's the same thing, right? Whether you induct on the number of years or the number of edges, it's the same because R is equal to M minus N, as you have proved on assignment 2,
Yes, yes.
right?
Yes,
So
yes.
it's the same thing then, right? Okay. So if it is a cycle, then you're done. So what if it is not a cycle? Then we know that there is an ear decomposition, but I won't even write that down, right? So the point is there is an ear that I can remove and get a smaller non-separable plane graph, right? Otherwise, G has an ear, which is basically a path, right? R, such that G minus R is a non-separable plane graph. Okay. In fact, I don't think this is a proof sketch. I'm basically writing down a whole proof. Okay, so let's look at G minus R. Can somebody complete the proof now? This is a non-separable plane graph. So by induction, every face is bounded by a cycle.
Sir, I think the proof is not trivial because once we find a planar embedding of G minus R,
Hmm.
we know that it has some faces in the
Yeah.
planar embedding.
Hmm.
Now we are adding the path R to that embedding.
Yes.
Now we know that the endpoints of the path are, say, suppose they U and V,
Yes.
there will be two vertices.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
there will be two vertices in some. So first of all, if U and V belong to the boundary of same face
Hmm.
of G minus R,
Okay.
if U and V belong to the boundary of same face of G minus R, then we are done because that face we know is a cycle
Good.
by induction hypothesis.
Okay, so let's look at
And
this case. So you are saying that supposing U and V belong to the same face in this embedding, right? So in G minus
Exactly.
R, there is some face, let's call it F,
yeah,
and you have two vertices U and V, and your,
Ex-
yeah, these are the ends of your ear.
yeah.
Okay, then what happens?
So then it is trivial why G will have planar embedding because we can add the year without any problem.
Right. And now you
Yeah.
get the two faces, which are again bounded by cycles.
Cycle.
Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Fine. So that is one case. What is the other case?
Other case is that basically U and V belong to two distinct faces.
Hmm. So you are saying that there is no face containing U and V both. Is that what you're saying?
There is no face containing U and V both. Exactly.
Okay. Is that even possible?
Sir, I think if the two faces are not adjacent, suppose U belongs to face F1 and V belongs to.
Well, you can belong to 5 faces, right? So I don't want to fix a face. So let's make, so the point is, if there exists a face F of G minus R such that U and V are both on the boundary of F regarded as a subgraph. Okay?
Exactly, sir. Yeah.
Then we are done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I claim that there has to be such a face. I claim that there has to be such a face. If there is no such face, then you would get some contradiction.
Sir, G is given to be planar, right?
G is given to be a plane embedding, and we have just removed one path from that to get a plane embedding of G minus R.
Okay. I think from that this one follows because since we are beginning with a planar embedding of G.
Exactly.
From that planar embedding, after using a path or a near, we are again getting a planar embedding.
Mhm.
That means the endpoints of that path must belong to the boundary of same face.
Of some same face. I don't even want to fix the face because they could belong to the common boundary of two faces for all I know. But there has to be some face that
Yeah.
contains both U and V.
Yeah. The same face need not be unique, but there will exist a face.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There will exist a face which contains both U and V in the boundary. Yeah.
There has to be some face like this because otherwise your original graph would not be a planar embedding.
Yes.
Okay, so the claim is that there exists a face f of g minus r such that u and v are both on the boundary of the face f. Okay, so this is the boundary of face f, and I will make it very clear,
Sir?
regarded as a subgraph. Yeah, go ahead.
So U and V are the points where the paths join the graph,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. R is a UV path. Okay. So because our original graph is a plane embedding, there has to be some face that contains both the points. Otherwise, the original thing would not be a planar embedding, right? And now once this is true, it means that you have basically drawn the ear inside that face or some other such face, right? And now all the faces of the graph are the same except for this face. This face f has split into two faces, f1 and f2. And both of them are still bounded by cycles because you take the path from u to v in the original cycle and then you add the ear r to it, you get one cycle. And likewise, you get the other cycle. Okay. Faces of G are same as faces of G minus R, except for the face F, which is split into two faces, F1 and F2. Okay. So if you want to make it more concrete, the faces of G are the faces of G minus R minus F union F1 union F2. Okay. And now you complete the proof yourself. There's a comment.
Sir, I think that is not true. The comment means multiple faces. If there is multiple faces containing U and V, then I think only one such multiple face will be split.
Yeah, exactly. Because you are adding only one ear, and that ear is an arc in the topological sense, and therefore it has to be drawn in a particular face of G minus R, right? So that is the specific face that will be split into two faces. Does that answer your question, Shrikant? If there are already 2 ears joining U and V, but we have removed just 1 ear, right? We just removed 1 ear R and we are adding that ear back. So does that make sense? Yeah, so to give so consider your example, supposing it's just a cycle plus 1 ear, right? So I am just removing 1 ear R, and that means that ear will belong to exactly one face of the previous embedding. So that will be your face F that you are looking at.
So I think he means that there's another UV, which is outside.
Right. So I think he is convinced now. Yeah, okay, good. All right. Any other questions or concerns? So we are removing just 1 ear. There could be many paths between U and V. I don't care. I just removed 1 ear between the two. And I'm looking at the embedding of the smaller graph that is given by the original embedding. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? All right. So that's Whitney's theorem, right?
Sir, we can actually prove that the cycles corresponding to all the faces form a basis of cycle space.
Hmm. Are you sure? You are almost right, but I'm not sure if you are completely right. So consider this graph.
I okay.
How many faces are there?
5.
Five. Five faces. What is m
Yeah,
minus?
we do not consider the face corresponding to unbounded face.
That's
Cycle
right.
corresponding to unbounded face.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So you can remove one of them, and then I think you get a basis,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Anyways, that requires a proof, but I think that is a correct statement. At least for non-separable graphs, that is true. So what he's saying is that you take all the faces except any one face, and that will give you basis for the cycle space. It's not too difficult to prove, and that is at least
I
true for
actually
non-separable
conjectured it
graphs.
from the Euler's formula.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see. Right. Yeah. Good. All right. Any other comments? All right. So, but I want to state another consequence. I want you to recall the cycle double cover conjecture. Right? What does it say? Does anybody recall the statement?
Sir, every non-separable graph without a cut edge has a cycle double cover.
Non-separable already cannot have a cut edge, right?
Not non-separable. I mean, every,
Connected graph.
yeah,
Yeah.
every connected graph without a cut edge
Yeah.
has a cycle double cover.
Each connected graph without a cut edge has a cycle double cover. Right? But we also observed that we don't need to look at all connected graphs. We can just look at the non-separable graphs, right? That was an observation. So I can replace this by non-separable graph, because proving it for non-separable graphs will prove it for all graphs.
Sir, more precisely, we can look at the three connected graphs, right?
That's right. That's right. But right now, I just want to look at the non-separable ones.
Non-separable
And
ones.
what I want to mention is that if you look at this result, Whitney's theorem, it basically proves it for all non-separable planar graphs. I claim that because of Whitney's theorem, the statement of the cycle double cover conjecture is true for all non-separable planar graphs, and therefore for all planar graphs. So the cycle double conjecture,
Can you repeat the statement once again?
yeah.
And it
So
and it can be part of at most two cycles. I mean two phases.
yes, exactly. In fact, it will be exactly two faces, because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
only time it can be part of only one face is when the
This
edge
is
is
the
a
cut.
cut edge. Right.
Yeah. Then
So this holds, my claim is that this holds for all planar graphs. Because you look at the planar non-separable graphs and you look at Whitney's theorem, every face is bounded by a cycle. So you take all the faces and now you have a cycle double cover of that graph.
Okay. This because since every edge belongs to exactly two cycles.
Exactly. Every edge belongs to exactly two faces.
Okay. So basically, the cycles corresponding to the bounded faces will give us cycle double cover.
Right. Cycles corresponding to the boundaries of the faces. All the faces, not just the bounded ones. You take all of the faces.
Yeah, not just the bounded. No, I have to take all the faces. Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is due to Whitney's theorem.
All the faces mean by we mean both bounded as well as unbounded, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So that will give us a cycle double cover.
Exactly. So if you look at this graph, which I keep drawing again and again, right? You look at these 5 cycles, that is a cycle double cover. Okay.
So, sir, is it yet to be proved for non-planar graphs?
Yes, it is open for non-planar graphs.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. All right. So what else? I want to mention one quick consequence of Whitney's theorem, which we will find useful later when we talk about three
So,
connected
sir,
planar graphs. Yeah, go
sir,
ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So once we prove the conjecture for non-separable, non-planar graphs, then we are done.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Because then it will be for all non-planar graphs. And since we know for all planar graphs by this argument, it will be
Yeah.
done for all graphs.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Good.
So am I right? Am I right?
Yes, yes, that is right. Okay. So I just want to state one consequence. In a loopless three connected plane graph, if you look at the neighbors of any vertex, let's take one example. So the same example that I keep drawing. This is a loopless three connected planar graph. You look at the neighbors of any vertex, they belong to a common cycle. So for this vertex, you look at this cycle. It contains all the neighbors of the vertex V. This one, and this one. The neighbors of any vertex belong to a common cycle.
Sir,
Yeah.
is this somehow related to how three connected graphs can be formed from wheels?
How they can be formed from?
Wheels.
No, it's not that difficult. It's a straightforward consequence of Whitney's theorem that we just discussed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So can you try to think of how to use Whitney's theorem to prove this?
Just XOR all the cycles.
XOR all the cycles.
Yeah. Not all
Uh,
the cycles means the cycles formed by taking adjacent.
I see. Okay, now I understand. So look at the cycles around the vertex V
Yeah, exactly.
and XOR them, and you are saying that that will give you another cycle. Sure, I can see how that can work, but there is a simpler argument. So you are in the right direction.
Why this doesn't hold for two connected graphs?
Sorry.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, I have a solution. I have a solution to this corollary. So what you can do for that particular vertex B, we can look for every face F in the graph G whose boundary contains the vertex V.
Hmm.
Every bounded face or every face, it doesn't matter. Okay. Now we know that by Whitney's theorem, the boundary of that face is a cycle. So boundary of each such face is a cycle. So now I am viewing those cycles as S sets, and I am taking the symmetric difference of all.
Right, so that is basically what I think the previous response was as well. So you take all the faces containing the vertex V, you take the symmetric difference of those cycles, and you will get a cycle.
Yeah.
But why is that a cycle? Why can't that be an even subgraph?
Sir, I think that is clear from the drawing.
Does anybody else have an explanation for that?
So since G is three connected, we can look at G minus V. It must be two connected, right? And then we can apply Whitney's
That
theorem
is
there.
a much easier explanation. So I don't know if the other way also works, because there my question is, why is the symmetric difference of those cycles an even subgraph? But here is a simpler way to think about it. Delete your vertex V. Okay. Delete that vertex V and look at the planar embedding that you get of G minus V. So this is the plane graph G minus V. Okay.
So
Now
why
the
doesn't
word.
this hold true for two connected graphs?
Sorry.
Why doesn't this hold for two connected graphs?
Okay, let's think about it in a minute. Okay, I'll come to that. We'll try to make a counter example, or we'll try to prove it. Okay, but first let's prove it for three connected graphs. So I want to delete a vertex, right? And now I have a non-separable graph, non-separable plane graph, because the original graph was 3 connected and loopless. Therefore, this graph is non-separable. In particular, it is 2 connected. Okay. Now, where is the vertex V? The vertex V is a point in the plane, right? So look at that point. It lies in some face. And where are all the neighbors of V? Well, they have to be on the boundary of this face, because your original graph was a plane graph, right? So you look at the boundary of this face, but that is a cycle by Whitney's theorem. Okay. So V belongs to some face F. The boundary of F is the desired cycle by theorem 10.7 and by planarity. Okay. So that's it. Does everybody follow this proof? Are there any questions or concerns? What about 2 connected graphs?
Basically, I have a question. So basically, when you're going to G minus V, so G minus V is non-separable. So that's why non-separable plane graph. So that's why we can apply Whitney's theorem to G minus V.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So, and also the boundary of A must contain the neighbors of V in the original graph.
Boundary of what?
Boundary of F.
Right. All the neighbors of V have to belong to the boundary of this, because the original graph is a plane embedding.
Plane embedding. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what about 2 connected graphs? Does this statement hold for 2 connected graphs?
No, sir, it doesn't. Yeah.
Doesn't? Okay. Good. I think I see an counter example, but I'll just give it as a do it yourself.
Sir, I think it is very easy to see, because 2 connected graph has a card vertex. We can simply.
Yeah.
So what you can do, we can take two disjoint copies of K5. We can take two disjoint copies of K5, and suppose let U is a vertex in the first K5 and V is a vertex in another K5 component.
Why K5?
And we join.
Why not K3? What's wrong with K3?
No wrong with K3. I am simply saying K5.
Okay.
It will also work for K3 as well. Okay. But I just say for K5. And suppose.
Give me as small a counter example as you can find.
Okay, so take two vertex disjoint copies of K3. And let U be a vertex in the first K3 and V be a vertex in the second K3 component, and we join UV by an edge.
Good. Okay.
So this is the resulting graph. This graph is not 2 connected.
Okay. But why is this a counter example? I want a 2 connected graph where the neighbors of a vertex do not belong to a common cycle. Okay. Anyways, think more about it. That what you gave is not a 2 connected graph.
Sir, we can simply take a cycle.
Okay, anyways, think about it later. I don't want to spend more time on this. It's a straightforward problem. Okay, so let everybody have the chance to think about it. Okay, good. Any other comments or concerns regarding all of this discussion? Okay, so if not, then I want to move on to another related concept, actually a very beautiful concept related to planarity, called plane duality. Okay. All right, so I'll start with an example, very similar to the standard example, but I have removed one edge. Okay. So let's label the edges and the faces, because that is what's going to be important. So E1, E2, E3, E4, 5, and 6, E7, and E8. Okay. And let's label the faces. F1, F2, F3, and F4. Okay. What we have is a plane graph G. So what we will do is, we will use the faces and the edges of this graph and their incidences and adjacencies to create another graph. Okay. And we will call it G star. Okay. And what we will do is, we will make one vertex corresponding to each face of the original graph. So we will put a vertex here, F1 star, F2 star, F3 star, and we will put a vertex for the last face, F4 star. Okay. So we construct G star. This is an abstract graph. I'm not making it as a planar graph. Or as a plane graph. Okay. So it has the vertices of G star. Maybe I'll just write it in words. Each vertex of G star corresponds to a face of G. Okay. And the edges will be in correspondence with each other. So each edge of G star corresponds to an edge of the original graph G. We will call this vertex F star corresponds to a face F, and edge E star corresponds to an edge E. Okay. And how will we decide adjacency in this graph G star? For every edge in the original graph, we will look at which two faces that edge belongs to. If it is a cut edge, it will only belong to one face. We will look at that later. But in this example, there are no cut edges. So every edge belongs to two faces. E1 belongs to F1 boundary and F4's boundary. Okay. So we will put an edge between F1 and F4, and we will call it E1 star. Okay. What about F1 and F2? There are two edges that are on the boundary of F1 and F2, E2 and E3. So we will have two parallel edges, E2 star and E3 star. F2 and F3, there are two parallel edges, E5 and E6 star. E5 star, E6 star. Okay. F4 and F3, they have a common edge, which is E4. So that will be here. Okay. And finally, F2 and F4, they have two common edges, E7 and E8. So there will be two parallel edges like this, E7 and E8. Okay. So the edge E star joins F star and G star if and only if E star belongs to the boundaries of F star and of G star.
Sir, I think it would be E belongs to the boundaries of F and
Sorry,
G.
yeah, you're right. E belongs to the boundaries of F and G. Thanks.
F and G, yeah. In capital G.
Yeah, in the original graph G. Okay. So this is in G star. Thanks. Good. And this graph G star is called the dual of G. Okay. Is the definition clear?
So, sir, even if G is simple, dual of G need not be simple.
Right, as in this example.
Sir, is the dual of dual isomorphic to G?
We will come to that. What do you
Okay.
think?
I have no idea currently.
Okay, okay. So it is generally true. One needs some condition.
Okay.
Okay, good. Before we move on to those more non-trivial questions,
Sir, I think what he said is correct. Mean dual of a dual will be isomorphic to G, but in that case, we have to modify the definition of dual. Means what we are doing here, we are basically for a given for every edge in G, we are keeping an edge star in G star. But instead, we can so here in our definition of dual did not be a simple graph, but there is an alternative definition of dual where dual must be a simple graph because it's only a matter of definition. So what you can do, we can take every vertex in G star correspond to every face in G, and between any two faces and between any two vertices in G star there will be an edge if and only the corresponding.
before you go further, is this definition of dual significantly different from the one we are discussing, or is it almost the same?
Difference is that only in the dual will always be simple graph for simple G.
Simple graph of the
So
dual.
yeah, so are you taking the underlying simple graph of what we are doing?
No. I am not taking the underlying simple graph of what you are taking.
Oh,
I am
I see.
defining it in a slightly bit different way.
Okay,
So my
okay. So
definition.
let's take it offline because I want to finish a few observations. So let's take this alternative definition offline because it's not too relevant for the main content, and we'll come to it later.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think, sir, why to infer that my definition will give the underlying simple graph, that I think is correct.
Oh, okay. Okay, fine. Okay. But then
Yeah.
the dual of that will not give you the original graph. That is for sure. Because if the number of edges changes, then you will not get the original graph because the number of edges should at least remain the same.
Yeah.
Right. So anyways, let's come to that alternative definition later. Before that, I want to make some simple observations. So what happens if your edge is a cut edge? If E is a cut edge of the original plane graph G. Okay. So what does that look like? You have a cut edge.
So basically there will be loop in G star.
Yeah. So your graph looks like this, right? And on both sides of E, you will have the same face. If this is the face F, this is also the same face F, right? So what will happen in the dual is the face F star will be adjacent to itself by the edge E star. Okay? I'll make an example and show it to you in that example as well. Then E star is a loop in the graph G star. Okay? All right. So cut edges become loops. And now, of course, you ask the natural question, do loops become cut edges? Let's take one example.
So do you want to mean loops in G star?
Loops in the original graph G, do they become cut edges in G star?
Okay.
Okay. So the E will, if it is a loop in G, is the corresponding E star a cut edge in G star? Okay. So So let's just make one simple example here. Supposing I take this graph, which has one loop and one cut edge. Okay, so let's say we have this F1, F2, and the face F3, and we have these edges E1, E2, E3, E4, and E5. Right, so what happens in the dual graph? In the dual graph, we have F1 star, F2 star, and F3 star. If you look at the edges E2, E3, and E4, they will connect F2 and F3 with 3 parallel edges. Okay, these are the edges E2 star, E3 star, and E4 star. All of them are parallel to each other. E1, its one side is F1 and the other side is F3. So E1 becomes an edge like this. This is E1 star. Right? And E5, it is actually going to be a loop on F3. E5 star. Right? So you see that the cut edge became a loop. E5 became a loop in the G star, E5 star. And the loop E1 became a cut edge. So that is actually true. Because what happens is, if you look at a loop, right, then there might be some part of the graph drawn here, and there might be some part of the graph drawn here. But the only way to connect them is through the edge E star that goes from this face to the other face on the other side. And so when you remove this edge in the dual, you will disconnect whatever is drawn inside from whatever is drawn outside. Does that make sense?
Sir, can you repeat this argument once again?
So if E is a loop, the edge E star will disconnect everything that is drawn inside this cycle. Think of this as a closed curve. Okay, the loop E is basically a closed curve. Do you agree?
Okay, I understood your point. So basically, any loop partitions the plane into two regions. So inside the first region, there will be some faces of the original graph G, and
Right.
inside the second region, there will be some faces, and the regions will be set as region because it is a planar embedding.
Exactly.
So the faces inside the loop correspond to vertices in G star,
Right.
and the faces outside the loop, they also correspond to vertices in G star, but there will be no path from this vertex to that vertex.
That's right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So you think of that loop as your simple closed curve. And now, if you remove the edge E star from the dual, it will disconnect everything that is drawn inside the loop from everything that is drawn outside the loop. Okay. So if you want a more interesting example, you can make this example and try to draw the dual yourself. Okay. So do it yourself. Draw G star. Okay.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So if E1 is a loop in the original graph, then F1 star in the dual will be always a degree of vertex of degree 1, right?
That's not necessary.
Why?
So what's your point again? Sorry, can you repeat it?
Yeah, means if E1 is a loop in the original graph,
okay,
and F1 is the face bounded by that loop in the original graph, then F1 star in the vertex in the dual F1 star will always have degree 1.
No, that's not true. So consider this example that I have shown you. So if it is true in this small example that we drew earlier, but if you look at this example, there are two faces on the side of E1, right? One face is F1 and the other side is F2. You agree?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now notice that F1, its degree is not 1, because you look at all the edges on the boundary of F1 and you will get one edge for each of those in the dual. So the boundary of F1 actually has 4 edges in this example.
Okay, so I got it. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the same is true for F2. It has more than 4, I think. Okay. Good. All right. So we're already at 12:50. Yeah. Let's see. I just want to make one last observation, and I want you all to try it on your own. So we define the dual as an abstract graph, but actually the dual itself is a plane graph. The dual itself is a planar graph. And to see that, let's go back to our original example. And I will just complete this example for you, and that will be the end for today. So let me see what I call the faces: F1, F3, F2, and F4. F1. So I'm going to change how I draw the dual this time. Okay. I'm going to put a vertex inside all of these. This is going to be F1. This is going to be F3. This is F2. And this is F4. I won't label the edges. I will let you label the edges yourself. And what you do now is you draw the dual in this way. For every edge, you basically cross the original edge and make a new edge in the dual.
Sir, I think now it is very easy to see why dual will be planar graph.
Exactly. So if you draw it like this way, you take a planar embedding of the original graph, then there is a natural way to draw the dual, which we defined as an abstract graph. But this natural way gives you a planar embedding of that abstract graph. Okay. So we won't prove this rigorously. We will just let it go by intuition, right? So intuitively, it seems clear that you should be able to do this. For each face of the original graph, you put a vertex of the dual inside that face. And now for that face, you just look at all the edges on the boundary and you draw the corresponding dual edge in your dual graph. Okay, so this red colored graph is your G star. And the original graph in black is your plane graph G. So there is a
Sir,
natural,
I think from the way you constructed this red colored graph, I think it is very easy to see now why dual of dual will be isomorphic to G. Under
it's
some
not always true. It's not always true, but that is true when the original graph is connected. That is actually the key point. There is a natural way to draw the dual in a planar fashion. And such a drawing, we will call it as a plane dual. Such a drawing or embedding is called a plane dual of the planar plane graph G. Okay, so the dual itself is an abstract graph, but we can also draw it in a planar fashion, and such an embedding that is obtained from the original embedding of G is called a plane dual of the graph G. Okay, and that's it for today. Sorry, I went a bit over time, but I wanted to give it a good conclusion.
So basically in this example, the red colored line signifies the plane dual, right?
That's right.
That's right, sir.
That's right. It's a plane dual. Yeah. So the G star here is the plane dual, and it is a planar embedding of the abstract dual. So maybe I'll put a tilde here. It is a planar embedding of the abstract dual G star. Okay. Does that make it clearer? All right. So that's all for now. And
So
because
from
it is
this
a
diagram,
planar
it
graph,
also seems clear that dual of dual is same. Dual of dual are isomorphic.
yes, but it's not true if the graph G is disconnected. So try a disconnected graph. Right. So do it yourself. Consider a disconnected plane graph G and observe that the dual of the dual is not isomorphic to the original graph, where you basically take the plane dual instead of the abstract dual. Okay.
Sir, can you show the plane dual?
Sir, I think it will be not isomorphic too.
Sorry, I think it was Krishnan who was saying something. Or,
Yeah, I asked you
okay.
to show the plane dual thing. Yeah.
Right, this one? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aranya?
Yeah, no. Actually, you wrote a wrong statement in the. It will be not isomorphic at the end of the.
I see. Yes, you're right. I meant to say not
Not
isomorphic. Thank you.
Yeah,
Good. Okay. So, anyways, the lecture is officially over. Please feel free to leave, but I'm still here for another 5-10 minutes.